Are you afraid to charge for your creative work? Feel like you're supposed to help everyone for free because you were once the kid who couldn't afford it? In this episode, we wade into the murky waters of money, the wounds it causes, and the complicated feelings that come with pricing your passion. Plus, stories about eating dollar menu Wendy's in secret, snotty handkerchiefs, handkerchiefs. Okay, and what happens when necessity finally outweighs fear? We're two childhood best friends talking about creative mindset.
I'm Emily Hatch.
And I'm Carrie Schaefer, and this is Honestly, Dear Listener.
Honestly, dear listener.
Woo! Welcome to our podcast, dear listeners. Today we're talking about everyone's favorite subject, money.
Dollar bills, y'all.
It is not my favorite subject. It is anxiety-inducing. So hang in there. If you're anything like us, just hang in there. We've got some tips and we've got some tips and trick. We've got some tips and tricks to help us all out. Woo!
Please leave that in.
Okay, I will. So Emily, what was your relationship growing up with money?
The what? That was what it was. What is it? We don't have that. So my family, my parents were pastors of a startup church. When I was 6, we moved to Colorado. We lived in a camper for a couple months.
I did not know that.
On my uncle's farm, who did not have money. His farm involved like him living in a trailer, and then we put an RV on that property for a couple of months. It was almost like a point of pride that we had no money at all. Like growing up, we had a very small church. So sometimes I think when people think of pastors, they think of like big church pastors. And we had, for most of my growing up, anywhere from 12 to 100 people in our church the whole time I was growing up. I think like 150 toward the end, maybe. Itty bitty to still pretty small. And churches survive and pastors survive on what people give. And so there was like this is a lot, I guess, but there was this kind of feeling that my mom, and especially my mom, had around people giving money, that even though that was our salary, my family's salary, it was still what they gave us. So there was this judgment in a way that we felt like they're paying our bills, right? So even the money that was made was like guilty money in a way. So I didn't have new clothes until I was 13. I got my first brand new shirt from a store. And we would like go to church on Sundays, and sometimes people would buy us lunch after, but it was always like this one particular dude, and he is passed, RIP, used to sometimes take us to this like cafeteria place. And
Was it Golden Corral?
No, it was called Furs.
Yes, on North Avenue.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
know the very place.
It's long gone, and as is our friend, but he had this like ritual that he would eat his big meal from the cafeteria food, and then like blow his nose at the end, but with a handkerchief.
Like a fabric one?
Yep. So he just blow his nose into an already snotty tissue and look at it, and that was often our Sundays. But this is the only way we got to go out to eat. So that was an example. Also, like a big treat, like once every couple weeks we could get something off the dollar menu at Wendy's, and that meant we were doing pretty good. We couldn't tell people though that we got to go to a restaurant. And
now, why is that? Why not be able to tell people that you went to a restaurant?
Because they're paying my mom didn't say this, but it was just implied. They're paying for us. So like if we have treats, that means that, like, they're paying us too much, I guess, or something. I don't know.
Too much
Um,
to eat off the dollar menu at Wendy's.
yes, every couple
Okay.
weeks. And I remember Christmas time, it'd be like, what does Emily want for Christmas from the church? And
Oh,
I'd get like Subway gift cards and be so fucking stoked, so I could get my salami subs. Uh, yeah, like a lady in the church made my costumes for theater. It was really a team effort to raise, I mean, honestly, okay, so, like, when I was 10, the back half of our house was falling off, um, and I or, like, maybe 12, because it was so old and rotten, that one of the guys at the church came over and weeded our cupboards because it was literally falling off, so there was, like, holes in the house, so that, like, vines were coming in,
whoa.
um and, so the church, he took the weeds that he had pulled out of the cupboard and took them to the church and was like, "We need to do something."
Wow.
So yeah, that's my growing up money relationship, weeding the cupboards, post lunch bugs, and, Subway gift cards. How about you? What's
Wow.
your, growing up money relationship?
I will say that that is the benefits of a church, which, since going through my deconstruction, I'm like, I don't want to go to church. No way, man. Like I am not going to set foot in that place. However, when we're talking about things like this where the church comes in and helps and makes sure that their pastor has what they need or that the other people in the congregation have what they need, like that's kind of what church is for, and that's kind
Mm.
of beautiful.
Mhm.
So, good on your church for doing that.
Yeah, it is really, it kind of fucks you up though in a way. I mean, yes, I agree. It just kind of fucks you up in a way though, like they would just leave groceries on our doorstep or like pitch in to like help us have basic needs. It
Mm.
feels really weird to be waiting to be given something.
Oh.
If and especially from like a child's perspective, right?
Mhm.
Like um yeah, didn't love that. And I but never could I ask, of course, for anything. Like, we'd go to somebody's house and they'd have, like, snacks that I never would get to have, and I wasn't allowed to ask for them.
Mm.
So I'd have to, like, just hope someone would be like, "Do you want some chips?" And I'd be like, "Yes."
Yeah.
So yeah, because we literally, like, for a couple of years lived on starches and eggs, like potatoes,
Mm.
rice, eggs. I didn't poop a lot. Anyway, so yeah.
So, growing up that way, what are the effects of that you carry into life now as a 40-year-old woman?
I don't know at this moment, but to be honest, there was like a time in my 20s where I was working a lot. I was a single mom. I refused to buy clothes on sale. I refused to go to thrift stores, like, which meant I didn't buy a lot of things, but whatever I did buy, I was like, I'm getting good things and
Mm.
like my kid is going to have good things. So there's some rebellion there. Also, just I think there's just a lot of guilt and shame around money. Having money, I feel the need to constantly, if I get something nice, like I got the upgrade or whatever, I feel the need to let people know that I don't have money. Cuz like
Mm.
that's one of the things in our upbringing too, is like one of the scriptures famously talking about money says it's easier for a rich man to or for a camel to enter the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to reach the kingdom of heaven.
Mhm.
Jesus asked rich dudes to give up their money to follow him. Um, the Zacchaeus was a tax collector, so he had money, and his end of the story was him giving that up, basically. Um, there's a rhetoric within Christianity that is having money makes you bad. I remember a
Mhm.
family in our church leaving our church because they had money and they couldn't take the guilt that they felt being around so many people who did not. They said they had to leave
Wow.
because they couldn't take it.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. What wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a lot
Uh,
of layers there.
yep, so how does that affect you? I have on the surface, I guess I see those things, but, like, deep down, I'm like, I'm sure it affects me more than
Mm.
I even realize, right? Um, what about you?
I think I grew up being very sheltered from the fact that we didn't have a lot of money. So I remember my grandma growing up, she would tell us about where she came from, which is Odessa, Texas, West Texas, during the Depression. And she remembers coming home. Her parents had 8 kids, and her mom weeping at the kitchen table because she had nothing to serve them for dinner that night. And I read so she had this little trunk when I was all through growing up, and when I was an adult, I came across some of the correspondences between her other family members that she had come across and I guess kept, and they mentioned little Mary, that was my grandma, going to if somebody asked, "Can little Mary come and stay with us for a couple weeks to a month or whatever?" They would always say yes, because little Mary would come back having gained weight. I have no
Mm,
idea how safe the conditions were for little Mary or if her body autonomy was being respected. I have no idea. She would never mention anything like that.
mm,
But when she was growing up, she had this saying that said, "Yeah, we're from West Texas. We sign our name with X's, but we cash them just the same." And from that, my grandma and then my dad, it was very important to them to live like other people and to not feel like their kids were going without or anything
mm,
like that. Um, my dad in 1992 got sick with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. So he was in bed for like 6 years, which is why
mm,
we moved to Grand Junction away from LA and all the environmental pollution. Um, but as a result, I really never saw my dad have a job ever. He
mm,
was on disability, which pays, but doesn't pay a whole lot. And my
mhm,
mom, when she had a job, worked at the church. And we know those church jobs, like church secretarial jobs, like, give me a freaking break. They pay
mm,
like nothing. But she would
mhm,
have like done it for free, but it was like, wow, I got a job. So I grew up with never really seeing my parents work, really,
mhm,
you know? So, and then they always seemed to have money, and I was always very confused about that. So, what ended up happening was my grandma, who had done decent for herself in investments and things, she would come and live with us every 6 months, and she paid for so much of the things we had.
mm,
Our entire house got recited, that was her. All new windows, that was her. A whole new deck, that was her. She helped probably pay for part of the house that we lived in, when we moved from LA to Colorado. It was a 5-bedroom house with
mm,
3 bathrooms. Like, it was huge
mhm,
to me. I mean,
mhm.
that's a big house.
Yeah.
And it was all paid for, probably because the market was so huge in LA and they had so much equity that when they moved to Colorado, they were able to pay for it in cash. They didn't have a
Well,
mortgage.
you guys moved right in the, like, big crash that happened in Grand Junction too, right? Like, the late early in 90s. You
3. It was early 90s, yeah, for sure.
yeah, and the big crash was, like, 85 or something,
Mhm.
right?
So it was
So,
probably still
house
recovering from
prices
that.
yeah. Yeah, we moved
Yeah.
around. We moved in 91, and our
Mm.
though dilapidated house, uh, was $32,000. Yeah,
Wow. Wow, wow,
so,
wow.
anyway,
Yeah.
your grandma helped with that.
Oh, yeah. Helped with that, and we grew up in, like, the nice part of town, kind of, like, at least at that time. And people were like, "Oh, you guys really must have money." And I was like, I guess we must." But my parents never bought, like, the brand new things. I remember when DVD players came out, they waited until, like, almost the early aughts to buy one for themselves. Like, they've always been very frugal. money was always talked about in terms of security. My parents knew how to live on a shoestring. They really
Mm,
did. I mean, like, I filled out the FAFSA or whatever it is that you for federal aid when you get
mm,
to college,
mhm.
and I saw they had to put their information on there. They made $12,000 a year, and
Wow.
I was like, it took me until college before I realized, like, "Are you serious?
That's
Like,
insane. That's a
that's how
thousand
much you
dollars a
make?"
month. That's insanely.
Yeah. That was probably my mom's job at the church,
Mhm,
you know? Um, and then, of course, disability. But, yeah, so anyway, I grew up with it being like, you always give 10% your first 10% to God. That's your
mhm.
tithe. They always did that. And
Same.
then you put another 10% in savings, always. So you're left with the 80%. And you kind of save that. Save, 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 save all the time. Save. So in that way, they kind of did, I don't want to say hoard their money, but like they're very frugal and savers. So
Mhm.
did I just talk a lot? I feel like I just talked a lot.
I talked a lot.
Okay. All right.
What is it with us feeling like we can't talk? So we're on a podcast, for Christ's sake. This is what we're doing,
I
right?
know. I just feel like I gave my whole family history and it was like too much.
I did that.
I know, but it's fine when you do
Yeah.
it. So yeah, I
But
know.
we're talking about our relationship with money and how we grew up and how we felt surrounding money.
Yeah.
So, like, were you stressed with, were you at all, you said you grew up thinking maybe you guess you had money. Were you at all aware at any point growing up that you didn't?
Um, I knew we had enough is what I
Mm,
knew. I knew that we did not have enough for extravagances. So like going to the store and buying clothes whenever we wanted to was a no.
mm-hmm,
Um, but for like Easter, I always had a new Easter dress.
mm-hmm,
Um, and a little hat and gloves and stuff. Uh But yeah, I think I always felt like we always had enough. There always was enough money when we needed it.
mm,
Um, and we went out to eat, sometime. My grandma almost always paid,
mm-hmm,
though. So in my mind, I'm like, "Oh yeah, we're fine." When really I probably wasn't aware of how much my grandma paid for things. In fact,
mm-hmm.
I know I wasn't aware.
Yeah. I feel like I was pretty aware of the fact that we didn't have money. And
Mm.
I think it was because of comparison to people at school and like what they got and that I didn't get to have those things,
Mm.
you know?
Mhm.
So I think I was pretty aware of that. And my mom made like, was like, don't ask for anything, don't da da da. So I think I got the hint that we were not doing very well.
Mhm.
Uh, and the fact that, like, the dude at the church had to be like, "Help our pastors," just stuff like
Right.
that. Um, so yeah, it's just like the identity then that you assume, right, is you don't have money. And
Right.
also, I think with my parents, like my mom owned a dance studio when I was younger, but not once we moved to Colorado. Um, so my parents also were like ministering. That's what they wanted to do. There's a there's something in my brain that told me if you do what you want to do, you don't get to make money.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yep.
So my dad had like a real job for the first once we got there a couple months in, he had a job at a hospital doing their billing,
Mm.
but only for a couple years. So then we definitely had no money. And yeah, it's clear. Like we get time or we get money. My parents went to every all of my shows. My dad, like, my parents didn't miss anything. Um, Basically, like, my parents were home a lot, they were
Mhm.
talking to people at the church and doing all that stuff, but yeah, there's this time equals no money, right?
Yeah.
It's one or the other. If you do what you want, you spend your time doing that, you don't get money for it.
Ugh, yeah, totally. I think, well, and this persists today. I think I have a belief somewhere inside that is exactly, if you're doing something you enjoy, you shouldn't get paid for it. If you're doing something that is feels horrible to you,
Mhm.
like, if I were an accountant, oh god. If I were an accountant, if I worked at a bank, like these all sound dreadful. I should be able to be paid for those
Mhm.
because
It's
they
miserable.
are miserable to me.
Mhm.
But if it's something that you like and something you enjoy, then no. Like there's this connection with misery
Mm.
that should, like, miserable things should equal you being paid for them.
Yep. Yep. And if you get to do something you like, then you don't deserve to be paid.
Exactly, because the
Yep.
payment is the joy that you get doing them,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that should be enough for you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, I
yeah.
would do this anyway. So, yep.
Mhm.
And that's where our mindset surrounding, like, being paid as creatives. I wonder, it's chicken egg, maybe? Like, if you start doing what you love for money, does it make you hate it? Like, because we have this rhetoric that you can't like it? I don't know.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, it
I
also has
do
pressure on it, but
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, there is absolutely. Once you start getting paid to do something, even if you love it, yeah, there is pressure, which is why I feel like, oh, I just wish I could do what I want and just not be not have to worry about it. So I'll end up doing things for free. And I
Mhm.
think attached to that is the fear that if what I'm offering is not good enough, then if I offer it for free and it's not good enough, then I can always say, "Why are you complaining?
It's
It was
free.
free."
Yeah.
But if I'm offering something that is for money, and not just for money, but like what it's truly what people are getting paid for out in the real world, which is
Mhm.
sometimes very good money.
Mhm.
Then if somebody doesn't like it, I can't imagine. Like, what do I do with that?
Yeah.
That calls into question my worth.
At your core, not just what you're worth to do something miserable,
Right.
but yes, but actually your passion and your product that
Right.
you're creating. Yeah. Then it's you.
So it makes me not wanna make things that I would then charge for because it's too like, what if my worth is called into question? What if I made the best thing that I knew how to make and it still wasn't good enough for people that are paying? What then?
Mhm. Mhm.
You know? Like, and
Yeah.
then it goes back to conversations we've had. We are not for everyone. But that's fine if no money's involved, but becomes really rough when money is involved.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, this is good timing to have this conversation. I'm having to uh figure out how I want to structure. I'm going to start teaching some classes in New York, and all of this swirls around in my head, and I get in a loop with it sometimes, like, okay, well, I want to be able to charge what I am worth and what I need, but also, like, people can't afford it and I feel bad, so I should make something very accessible. And then what if I make it really accessible and they don't value it because it doesn't
Mhm.
cost a lot of money? Or what if, I mean, it makes me not want to do it. I think
Yeah.
that's the loop, and that's why I haven't, cuz
Yeah.
it's yeah. Um
Yes. And that's why I haven't I'm like I'm in the middle of building something that I will release at some point.
Yay.
It's not like I wanna do it just because we lost a significant amount of income with all of these governmental cuts, which is true. It it's because I was scared before to do it for all the reasons that we just mentioned. And now my need for money is greater than my fear.
Mm.
So it's actually pushing me to do the things that I've always meant to do, but was so scared to do before. What is that quote? That necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes. Yep.
And yeah, so I have to, and I want to, but I have to figure out ways to heal my money wound.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we'll be fine, but I won't be where I want to be financially. It's interesting because in this book, that was recommended to us, "You're a Badass at Making Money" by Jen Sincero, um, she talks about how money, and I can barely say it does not feel, it doesn't feel fully true. It feels true, but it feels yucky to say. She says that money enables us to be more ourselves. And on first glance, I'm like, yuck.
Mm.
Seriously? No, absolutely not. But what she's saying is that money is energy. Energy allows us to make the things that we want to make. It allows us the time, to
Mhm.
be able to do these things, to go places that we want to go to, which which expands who we are. I mean, it allows us to have all of these experiences that add to who we are as a person, and that's not bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're saying though, like, it doesn't feel true. It's like, I believe that for her, but it
Uh-huh.
doesn't feel true to me.
No.
Um, yeah. I there's a book that I listened to, by I think her name is Amanda Francis, called Rich as Fuck, and it's a very similar, that it's like that money is an external thing that moves,
Mhm.
and it's either moving with and through you, or you're taking yourself out of it, but it's just, it comes and goes, and that's just what it
Right.
is. Like, uh, and that was helpful also, like the same kind of energy thing. It's just hard.
Mhm.
It feels That's all feels so good until you're like, okay, now charge. What are you going to charge for your product,
Ah!
your art, your, yeah,
Mhm.
your course, your class, whatever? And then you're like, oh, money's money now.
Yeah. But we live in a society where so much is attached to money. Money is neutral, right?
Hmm.
It's something that we've ascribed because I mean, the paper that it's printed with and the actual coins that get minted, I mean, those we all agree that those mean certain things, right? So it
Hmm.
has the public trust. Um, but along with money that should be neutral comes all of these other things, right? Worth, status, ambition, all of these guilt, shame.
Hmm. The
Um,
perception of greed. Yeah. Hmm.
exactly. And I want to move from from believing that money is that not having money somehow makes me holier.
Hmm. Well, it's literally what we were taught.
Right. Like, yeah. Well, and we were socialized as women that you volunteer
Mm.
in your church and you do that for free.
Hmm.
And so we're kind of it feels like we're taught you should be able to do something that helps other people for free
Yep.
instead of being valued for, all the things that you're doing as evidenced by you being paid for them.
Hmm. Do you think, when you look at people with money, do you think that they're bad?
I think I bad. I think in some ways there is this gut reaction, if I'm being really honest, that they don't. Yeah,
Mm,
I guess so.
mm.
Not like through and not like you're gonna
Yeah,
murder
like
me or
you're an
anything
evil
like that.
person. Yeah. But
Yeah.
just like there's a So you think poorly, ha, ironic, of rich people?
Um, I wouldn't say, you know how there are, like, different layers that we're aware of?
Yes.
I would never, if somebody wealthy walked down the street, I don't feel like I'd be like, "What a piece of shit," or anything like that. But there is sort of underneath a lot of the layers that I think I'm aware of. There is that, because when you asked that question, my body was like,
Mhm.
like I felt a thing somewhere, but it's deep and it's low down.
So these are weird questions, but uh do you feel that about, in air quotes, rich people in general, or specifically, could you, this is weird. Could you think about people that have money? Do you think of those people as that? Ooh,
Um, n no,
like,
but there's a
because they
question there.
they deserve it, right?
Right.
In most cases.
I think what I feel about people with money is resentment, is
Mhm.
what I feel. And like we've talked about in an earlier episode about jealousy,
Mhm.
and envy, that resentment almost always has nothing to do with the other person. It has everything to do with you and what you don't feel like you're allowing yourself to do or have,
Mhm.
which ties in beautifully with not allowing myself to feel free about money.
Mhm. Mhm.
That I think that's I believe that's what it is. That's the feeling I get. What
Mhm.
about you?
Uh, I'm sure that I have resentment to some degree, but to be honest, it feels more general. But when I think about individual people that I like, that charge a lot for their services, or, I can tell they have money. Overall, I'm like, well, they get to have that.
Right.
Like, they're worth that. They get to do that. That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
I do not deserve that.
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
well, that person can charge $300 an hour. Why? Like, I think, well, yeah, that makes sense. That's how much they cost.
Right.
Like, I don't think, well, fuck you for that.
Mhm.
And so when I think about my rates, or what I'm doing, what I'm charging, I can't do that because I have to think about all the people that can't afford that. Those
Right.
people don't have to think about that. I don't know why I don't think that for them. I only think it for myself.
Right.
And I think that does go back to church stuff.
Mhm.
Like, I was the kid who couldn't afford this. So
Mm.
I don't want to be the person that people can't afford,
Yeah.
because I believe that they will look at me and say, "You're not worth that. I
Mm.
can't believe you're keeping this from me because you think you're better than me." You know what I mean?
Mm. Mhm.
But I don't really think that about people. Uh, I just think it about me.
Mhm.
And that's kind of fucked, right?
Mm. Ugh. Yeah.
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 And it feels like scarcity too. It's like,
Mhm.
well, if you
Oh.
don't take everybody, if you don't take anything that people will give you, like, for your services, then no one will come to you.
Mhm.
There's that too.
Yeah. I think
So,
scarcity is a huge factor when we talk about money, that there's only so much. And so the little you have, you must hoard, or, or it's gonna be terrible. Like, and this is what Jen Sincero says in her book when she talks about scarcity mindset. She's like, It's not, money is not yours to hoard." I mean, you could, I suppose, but thinking about it in terms of, it's actually energy and it's circulation. So
mhm,
it comes to us, it passes through us. We use it as energy to be able to do things in the world. and then it goes to someone else, and then they get to use it how they see fit, and then it comes back to us. Like, thinking about
Mhm.
it in terms of, like, it's not Scrooge McDuff's, like, vault that he swims in, like, that's not the point of it. But and that's not to say that saving is bad. I don't believe that saving is bad. Of course, like, I'm
Saving
not
versus
saying that.
hoarding, those are 2 big
Yes,
different words.
2 different,
But
yeah, definitely
yeah.
2 different things. Like, I've known people that made great money, hoarded it, were so, stingy and so miserly, and then they died with this hoard, and they never got to enjoy it.
They didn't live
And
their
I
life. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's a shame too, or not a
Mm.
shame, it's not, it's it's unfortunate.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, it because you could have used it to better people's lives, to better your life, to be a part of the circulation, of
Mhm.
that. I think money kind of works like creativity a
Mm.
little bit. Like, we circulate, like, the creativity circulates all around us. We are a conduit, like we've talked about before, in
Mhm.
that circulation where, we're not the terminus
Mm.
of that conduit. We are a part of it, and it keeps going and it keeps swirling. And the same with money.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hmm.
That's fun. So
Yeah.
how can we reframe in the moment? Because sometimes I can think about this really zoomed out and I'm like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
conduit, energy. But then when I come across a wall, right?
Mhm.
How do we move through that in those moments?
Well, give me a scenario. I don't usually say that word that way, but give me a scenario.
Scenario.
Yeah.
Uh So I'm going to teach a class and
Mhm.
I have to figure out how much I should charge for this class.
Mhm.
Uh, and can immediately feel guilt thinking about charging anything for it.
Mhm.
What do I do?
Yeah.
How do I move through this to be true to my own self, what I need? This is so hard,
It's
right?
so hard. And to answer, I don't really know because
Right.
I feel like I have a lot of money wounds, but I would say that if we don't price ourselves appropriately, then we're doing our entire industry a disservice. Right?
Mm.
Like, for musicians, for instance, I've heard of musicians for playing for like $20 a night, $30, and I mean, it's like hardly
For beer
even.
and pizza. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, if if we teach society that they are allowed to devalue our art or pay us pennies on the dollar for our art, they're gonna know that and believe that.
Mhm.
However, if we look at it like it is my duty to my industry to price myself competitively, and also, uh, eh, that while valuing the true worth of what I'm offering, we are raising our entire industry up.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think it helps me to think about that, that
Mhm.
I'm helping everyone when I help myself.
Mhm. I love that. I think that argument that happens in people's brains or my brain is like, but what about, so now I've raised this, our country's in crisis, people don't have money, like things for me like singing or, stuff like that. It's like everyone should be able to sing. Like
Mhm.
I have to remind myself that I am not the only human on the earth
Mhm.
that is doing what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And it's not my responsibility to save everyone. It is, though, my responsibility to myself and to my industry to charge for my experience level.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's one of my friends said that. he was like, "You're not the only teacher in the world."
Absolutely.
And I was like, "Okay, great." Yeah. So that helps me kind of be more at peace, and like what you said about you're raising your industry up. The other thing is I did like a short business class with a coach last year, and she was saying that the more you do, the more you charge, the more you figure this part of it out, the more you can give. So
Mm.
you cannot continue to give
Mhm.
like my family and they're in the church. We couldn't do anything for anybody financially or any of that. We didn't have anything to give.
Yep.
So if you are making a good living, you have time because you are charging what you're worth and doing all that, then you have more resources to be able to do good for
That's
others.
such a good point. Yes. Yes,
So then you can
absolutely.
offer a free workshop or do something like that. I mean, I know I'm talking about teaching voice mostly, but because that's what I know. But say, okay, you're gigging, you're charging what you're worth for gigs. You can take more charity gigs
Right.
because you are doing well enough to feed yourself.
Absolutely.
You can't just do all charity gigs because you won't be able to do that, and you'll resent the good you are doing
Right.
versus so I think these are good reminders.
Yeah,
We're not the only person who does what we do.
that's right.
We are helping our fellow sisters in the industry. And, you know, you can do more good if you have more to give.
That's right. I also think I've heard because I tend to think in all or nothing, like either I'm priced bottom of the barrel or I'm priced at the top,
Hmm. Hmm.
instead of like finding a middle ground, which looks like, I'm going to charge what I'm worth. And also, by the way, you don't have to do this, artists, but I'm saying if you were like, I feel like I want to do more for a struggling artist, fine. Take on one pro bono person a year
Hmm.
and be choosy about it, right?
Hmm.
Somebody that is like they've got potential and they're hungry and they want to learn.
Hmm.
But take on that one and then price yourself what you're worth. And by doing helping that one person out, like just because it's one person, like doesn't doesn't mean that that's invalid because you're, not helping everyone. You're not going to be able to help everyone.
Yep.
Might as well be able to help one person really well
Hmm.
than a lot of people shittily, I guess.
Hmm.
And also you being underpaid for what you do.
Yeah. Because it's not sustainable.
Right. Exactly.
So you won't be able
Exactly.
to do that for very long without getting bitter and weird and
Exactly.
hungry.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Also, I heard an interesting thing the other day. Emily and I are in this group of four ladies that we are we are going for our goals and we're going for those dreams. And some of those dreams are financial dreams. And one of us was like, I don't know how to price this, and another one was like, price it what you think, and then add more to it. So
Hmm.
many times artists underprice. So I would say that find a number and then add to it. Maybe even what I wonder, like maybe even double it. Some of us are really underpriced.
Yeah, I think it's like you need to be honest with yourself about how you feel about this,
Hmm.
and then try to compensate for the level of that you feel.
Hmm.
Because chances are, if you're pretty then it's not going to be enough money.
Right. Another thing that has helped me a lot, and I use this tool all the time in coaching, is depersonalize it. Imagine somebody you absolutely love, a friend, a family member, whatever. Imagine that they had all the skills and talents that you have. Okay. Now imagine they came to you and they said, I have this offering. What do I price it as? And they come up with some ridiculously low number. What are you going to say?
Yep, that's all you're worth.
Ri Well, I guess that's it, bye. No, like, if somebody I loved came to me and said that, I would say, "Like hell you're gonna price yourself like that. I feel like when we imagine that it's somebody else, especially somebody that we love, we're much more able to be realistic about our pricing than if we
Mhm.
imagine that it's us. Ideally, yeah, I would love to be like, yeah, I know my worth. I'm going to pray. I would love to not have to feel like I had to depersonalize, but that's where I'm at right now.
Oh, man. Well,
Yeah.
friends, let's all practice this. It's some tricky stuff, but it's
Yes, it
very
is.
important for us to practice and move through these very challenging things because as we discussed last, I think it was last episode, um I forget.
Yeah. So do I. Well, and like you were saying, we're practicing this, right? We're like anything, we haven't arrived. I haven't arrived. You haven't arrived. I am practicing what it looks like to be like, yeah. So what if I did charge this much and then see how it goes?
Yep.
Just see. You can
Yep.
always lower your rate. You can always raise your rate. Like
Yeah.
your rates are not set in stone.
We forget we can change our mind. Oh, damn. Well, thanks for listening, dear listener. Oh, and yeah, let's keep up that good practice, shall we?
Let's do it. All right. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Honestly, dear listener.
Woo.